Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi, older sister and fantasy lore nerd.
And I'm Nicole, younger sister and romantic at heart.
And today's episode covers everything you need to remember from Quicksilver to dive right into the next book in the Fate and Alchemy series, Brimstone, that comes out on November 18th. First things first, please listen closely to our spoiler warning. Since we're discussing everything you need to know before reading Brimstone, this episode has spoilers for Quicksilver and any of its bonus chapters. Interviews with Callie Hart are also fair game.
So, with all of that said, if you don't know who a very important heir is, then please go finish the book. We will be here when you're done, and you'll have 5, soon to be 6, episodes of Fantasy Fangirls Deep Diving Quicksilver, where we discuss all the world-building theories and characters to catch up on.
Next, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
You know what they say about big canines? Hard, big, long canines. You know, Lexi. So please be mindful of those little listening ears.
Additionally, we are so excited to see you at upcoming live events.
We are thrilled to be hosting a Brimstone midnight release party and doing a live Q&A and games galore in partnership with Tattered Cover and Book and Gather on November 17th in Denver, Colorado.
And on March 6th through 8th in Dallas, Texas, we will be podcast partners at Dreamers and Readers Festival.
Check out our website or the links below for more information to these events, including a promo code for Dreamers and Readers.
Last thing before we jump into this Quicksilver recap episode. If you love Fantasy Fangirls and want more events, more content, more community, and so much more all around, please check out Fantasy Fan Club.
We have 3 membership tiers that you can join, including things like access to our Boppin' Discord, promo codes for live events, early access to ad-free episodes, access to author interviews like one with Callie Hart, and so much more.
Join the party at fantasyfangirls.com/fanclub. The link is also in the show notes. And really and truly, thank you so much for supporting us as we've turned this podcast into a dream come true. It's all because of you.
And now it is time to prep for the coronation of Saris Fane, Queen of the Vampires.
So, Nicole, a recap episode means you have to recap the book, right?
Sounds so threatening.
In our deep dive, we always begin each episode with Nicole's Lore's Ballad segment, where Nicole summarizes what happens in the stretch of chapters we're covering. While she usually rhymes beautifully, I might add, I think for simplicity's sake, we're going classic unhinged today. Am I right?
You are correct. So without further ado, Saris Fane, locally known thief and apprentice glassmith, finds herself in quite the pickle. She is the proud new owner of a Golden Guardian's Gauntlet, which is a big no-no in Zavarin. Rushing off to the local tavern, Saris finds her brother, Hayden, outside nursing his post-gambling losses to the one, the only, Carrion Swift. She leaves her bag with the Forbidden Gauntlet outside with Hayden and marches inside to confront the biggest flirt in Zavarin. Back outside, Hayden has run off with the gauntlet in tow and has gotten himself cornered by the Guardians. To protect her brother, Saris admits she took the gauntlet and fights back against the Guardians, killing 2 before she is arrested. After her arrest, Saris is brought to the Hall of Mirrors, or what was once the Hall of Mirrors, and now is just a dusty room with an old sword stuck in the ground. Interesting. The immortal bitch queen, Madra, orders her favorite guard to make her sing, Heron. And Heron must have been taking lessons from Arya Stark because he stabs her with the pointy end of his blade. Even half dead, Saris summons her inner King Arthur and she pulls the sword out of the ground and unknowingly unlocks the Quicksilver pool. Raising out of the Quicksilver is a tall man with shoulder-length black hair and broad shoulders. His eyes are mismatched with one fully green and the other rimmed in silver. Welcome, Kingfisher, or death, according to Saris. After looping a chain around her neck, he takes her through the Quicksilver and everything goes dark. Dun dun dun. Cyrus wakes up fully healed in Evalia, the Fey realm, where she meets Everlane, Debarra, and Renfis Orithian, sister and friend to Kingfisher. Now that she's awake, she's marched off to meet the king of Evalia, aka Everlane's father, and Kingfisher's stepdad, Belicon. Since Cyrus can awaken the Quicksilver, Belicon gives her 1 week to figure out her alchemy powers so he can take over the world! I mean, totally just defend his people from the vampires that he's totally 100% not working with in secret, right? Cyrus works for several days to learn to transmute the Quicksilver, and nothing. Using a hot, steamy makeout as a distraction, Cyrus steals Fisher's ring, believing it will protect her through the Quicksilver. But psych! It was a lie. The ring is just an ordinary ring. You can't use it to go back to Zelvarin. But don't worry, Cyrus, Kingfisher will make a deal with you. He will go get Hayden, and in exchange, Cyrus has to do everything he says. That's definitely not one-sided. She agrees, but is furious when Kingfisher returns not with Hayden, but with Carrion fucking Swift. But the oath is binding, and it's time to get the fuck out of the Winter Palace and meet up with Ren to head to Kalish. At Kalish, Kingfisher's family home, Cyrus continues her failed experiments with the Quicksilver. Taking a break in the dining room, a group of feeders crashes the party, leaving Cyrus with a nasty scratch. Thanks to the oath with Kingfisher, Cyrus is left bedridden for days to heal, and when she is finally able to leave his bed, it's back to the forge. And more failed experiments. But the experiments can wait. To the war camp we go! The sexual tension is heating up. It's their moment. But sadly, Kingfisher only gets a nibble in this time. Off in the war room, Danya is getting pissed. And Cyrus does not appreciate this member of the Lupo Proalia yelling at her man, so she explodes Danya's super fancy sword, which does not help the situation. You know what else didn't help the situation? Malcolm, the king of the vampires, and his horde of vampires are trying to cross the Darn. Thank the gods for those ice-breaking hammers. Speaking of hammers, bang, bangity bang. I said, this is the definition of come and go. Bang! After getting the TLDR on Fisher's Lupo Proalia, Lorith's backstory, and that she's the strongest alchemist in history, Cyrus is whisked off to Ballard for a mini getaway with Kingfisher. And bang, bang, bangity bang. I said, bite me, Fisher! Bang! Ruin me. At Carrion Swift's suggestion, Cyrus asks the Quicksilver to work with her, and it works. Well, shit. I bet Carrion will be riding that high for a while. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The Quicksilver wants something in return. A song. Well, it's a good thing we have a bard in this party. After slaving away for hours in the forge, Cyrus finally finishes the brand spanking new Godsword. Sorry, Danya. Lorith rolled a nat 20 on performance. You snooze, you lose. After successfully fending off the horde of feeders thanks to Lorith's new badass Godsword, the wolves are in for a surprise. Malcolm has not only kidnapped Everlane, but he's bitten her, and not in the fun way. Tracking down a witch, Ishabal, the crew has a plan. They'll sneak in, steal Everlane back, and use magic to draw the venom out. Easy peasy. But first, bangity bang, Kingfisher accepted the mating bond. Bang! The next morning, Cyrus wakes up to find that Kingfisher has gone off on a suicide mission. Marching through the Shadow Gate, Cyrus informs the others of Kingfisher's plan to sacrifice himself, and they come up with a plan of their very own. When Fisher opens the Shadow Gate and Everlane gets plopped in from the ceiling, Cyrus, Lorith, and Carrion get yeeted through and find Fisher in Malcolm's grubby little claws. But that's not all they find. Belicon, Madra, and Malcolm are all in cahoots to keep this war going. What? Le gasp! Cyrus uses her magic to detect a Quicksilver coin that is binding Fisher to Malcolm within the labyrinth, while Carrion taunts Malcolm into taking a little nibble, only to reveal that he is a member of the Fey royal family whose blood curse made the initial vampires the Dianthus line. Cyrus flips the coin, and the 110-year bet finally comes to an end. Huzzah! And she takes her sword and cuts off Malcolm's head, but not before he shoves his hand deep into Cyrus's guts, leaving her to bleed out on the maze floor. As she's dying, Taladeus, Malcolm's second, starts the process to transform her into a vampire. But the Quicksilver pool in the maze summons her. To where? Oh, only the realm of the gods. Zareth, god of chaos and change, spills some hot tea and gives Saris a choice to live, and she takes it. Waking up, Saris discovers that she's not where she expected, and she's not just a vampire. She's half fae, half vampire, something they've never seen before. Oh, and she also killed Malcolm, making her the new Queen of Sanisroth.
All right, friends, now that the storyline of Quicksilver is fresh in our minds, it is time to set the stage for where things left off for key characters and plot points as we head into Brimstone. Let's start with something easy, or rather somewhere easy. What's the last we know of the happening haps in Zelvarin? We know from Callie sharing in interviews that Kingfisher and Carrion will travel to Zelvarin in Brimstone, so we're thinking we're going to spend quite a bit of time in this realm in the second book. Zelvarin is both the name of the supposedly human realm and the main city. Zelvarin is a hot, windy desert with two twin suns, Balia and Min, which dip low in the sky but never actually set, so it is never dark here. As a result, the climate here is hot, and very, very dry. So dry that it's only rained once in the last 16 years, and people across generations had never seen rain before. There is sand, and more sand here. And it's so windy that you have to wear a mask or a scarf over your face so not to breathe the hot sand into your lungs. The sandy wind has been slowly eating away at the city, leading to the questionable integrity of most sandstone structures, as Saris's father unfortunately found out. Food and water are generally scarce unless you are a member of Madra's elite and live in the hub, especially water. Most wards have very strict water rations. Zelvarin City's layout is fashioned after the shape of a wheel, with the innermost hub being for Madra and her elite, and then there's the outer wards with varying levels of poverty. Saris and Carrion are from the third ward, though Carrion wasn't living there anymore, and the third ward has been quarantined for the past 6 years, ever since Saris's mother, who was in league with the rebels, was killed for having a few small weapons on her.
Next, let's get into Madra, Queen of Zelvarin, and generally just not a great gal. Not only was she in charge of quarantining the third and created the water ration situation, she also is incredibly power-hungry, paranoid, and is determined to live forever. Which, yes, despite being human, she is well over 1,000 years old. When she came into power, she rounded up every magic user in Zelvarin and had them killed, and is still on the lookout for anyone who has magic, specifically alchemists. More on them in a moment. Why? We're not sure, but dang, we're curious. 1,000 years ago, Madra plunged Solace, Kingfisher's father's godsword, into the Quicksilver pool in her palace, and thus stilled the Quicksilver pools across the universe. Not a very popular move, as it pissed people off like Belicon, who relied on the Quicksilver pools for things like trade, amongst most likely other things, between the realms to bolster his power. But at the end of Quicksilver, we learn that the history is all water under the bridge now. She is happily part of the Triumvirate, a trio that includes her super powerful brothers, air quotes, Belicon and Malcolm. And together, the three crowns are more powerful united and cannot be killed unless the whole group of them is killed. Again, more on this later. At the end of the story, Madra, after being a little coward, goes through the Quicksilver pool, assumably back to Zelvarin, just in time for the celebration of Evenlight in the Silver City.
Madra's captain of the guard, Heron, is a bit of a question mark by the end of Quicksilver, so we're on the lookout heading into Brimstone for an update on him. Last we saw on the page, Saris snapped his neck in the maze, but Nicole and I are both not convinced Heron is actually dead, because he is a cockroach. He can't die. Early in Quicksilver, remember how he was consumed by the metal of the blade that Saris accidentally melted? Well, when Heron showed up in the Gilthry maze at the end of book 1, he was not looking so good. With eyes of pure Quicksilver, he was in a weakened state with shattered teeth and peeling skin. And as we got confirmation in the UK bonus chapter, Heron is more than 1,000 years old too. Like he's made clear, he cannot die. So that leaves the question, does snapping his neck have any permanent repercussions?
No.
With Madra escaping through the Quicksilver, we don't hear anything about Heron after his neck is snapped in the maze. So assuming he can't die, is he still in this realm, or has Madra found a way to get him back to Zelvarin with her? We don't know.
There are some very important people in Zelvarin, namely Hayden, Saris's younger brother, he's about 21 years old, and Elroy, her mentor and the closest thing she has to a father figure in this world, with both her parents being dead. Hayden is alive, huzzah, and in the 7th ward with a job as a store clerk. After Saris was taken at the beginning of Quicksilver, Carrion got Hayden some pretty sick digs. He has triple water rations and a room above the shop he works at, and the last time Carrion visited him, he was comfortable, though unhappy. Hayden is dealing with quite the guilty conscience about getting caught with the gauntlet and Saris being taken in his place, and he blames himself for it. And last we know, he was brainstorming ways to break Saris out of the palace, which is quite concerning considering Hayden is very immature. It's worrisome. I am deeply concerned for what hot water this dude has gotten himself into by the end of Quicksilver and the beginning of Brimstone. Then we have Elroy, the best glassmaker in Zelvarin, who has been going up to the palace gates every day and demanding to see Saris. But every time he's turned away. He spends a lot of his time working in the forge, still in the 3rd ward, and according to Carrion, he's grumbling a lot about the mess that Saris has left him in. Other than that, the 3rd continues as it always has. Odd, considering Madra threatened to kill all of them before Saris was taken to Evalia. She was determined to weed out the people responsible for teaching her how to fight like Saris can.
Fisher speculates that Madra will conscript the citizens for the army she has to quickly build, now that the Quicksilver is reactivated and other realms are a threat. But again, Carrion doesn't mention anything about this. So as far as we know, she has not moved forward with conscripting and building an army yet.
The Guardians, Madra's highly trained guards, are not looking for either Elroy or Hayden as they are preparing for something called Even Light, which by our timeline math is coming up within the next week in the story. The whole city's been abuzz with talk about what gift Madra's going to give them this year. And yes, this feels very important for book 2.
So in preparation for the Even Light holiday, they're building some kind of stage with flowers. And no, it does not look like the gallows. While we don't know what the holiday of the Even Light is for, though we wonder if it has to do with the two suns' positions in the sky, just thinking about that Even Light there, I am so convinced that when Kingfisher and Carrion come into Zelvarin, this Even Light celebration that feels very ominous will be going on and play a big part in the plotline. So that's the realm of Zelvarin. Now let's shift our focus to the realm and territory we were in for the majority of Quicksilver, Evalia. Evalia is a large territory in this realm and it is ruled by Belicon. If you look at the map, Evalia is north of Sanisroth and east of Galaria. It's wintertime in Evalia. I'm not sure if it's like this year-round in the whole territory, but at least it is always wintertime in the Winter Palace. Go figure.
Which is the capital of Evalia. We've spent a few chapters in the Winter Palace in Book 1. The most notable things we have for this area is that it is the home of Belicon, King of Evalia, and Everlane, his daughter and Kingfisher's half-sister. It is also home to a big Quicksilver pool in its basement that Fisher uses to travel to and from Zelvarin when he's supposed to be getting Hayden, but ended up getting Carrion Swift. Our protagonist left not long after that. However, we can assume, based on clues we get from when Saris is facing vampires later on at the river, that some shit went down at the Winter Palace after Saris, Fisher, Carrion, Ren, and Onyx all left. Not only was Everlane taken to Malcolm, the king of the vampires, but there are several mentions of feeders who are wearing aprons that Saris thought she recognized from the Winter Palace. And they also look like fresh feeders. This is bad, bad, bad. When we asked Callie about these particular feeders and if they are indeed from the Winter Palace, she lovingly said that she cannot answer that question. So while we don't have confirmation, we are deeply concerned that many of the residents of the Winter Palace are either feeders or, like we see with Belicon's men at the end of the book, they are doing Belicon's bidding, even though it's now coming from a place of, wait, he's been working with the enemy this whole time? What this means for our favorite librarian, Rusarius? We have no idea, but here's to hoping that he's alive.
I am so worried about my boy Rusarius. I just really want to know what is going on at the Winter Palace. Like,
Same.
That... Oh my goodness, what is happening over there?
I'm still worried about Clements over here.
Rusarius, I need you to be okay.
At least your crackers. You need your crackers.
Have one more full meal before you go! While we're on the topic of the Winter Palace, we have to bring up its ruler, Bellicon. Yes, boo, you suck, Bellicon. When Kingfisher was 10 years old, Bellicon allegedly sent his father, Fenrin, on a mission through the Quicksilver to assassinate Madra in Zelvarin. However, Madra ended up stealing all of the universe's Quicksilver portals with Fenrin's Godsword, cutting off all realm-to-realm trade, transportation, and communication. But Bellicon blamed Fenrin for sealing the Quicksilver and spewed propaganda against Fisher's father, framing him as a traitor to the realm for doing such a horrible thing. While the precise timeline of events is purposefully a little confusing, Bellicon became king of Yvelia in the first place by usurping and killing the royal Dianthus line. Fenrin was able to smuggle the Dianthus royal heir out of the realm and into Zelvarin, who turns out to be Carrion Swift. But after Fenrin disappeared for good through the Quicksilver and was cast out as a traitor, Bellicon ordered Fisher's newly widowed mother to marry him. Because she was a very powerful oracle, someone who can see the future, and because Fisher's family ruled over Kalish and they were very wealthy. So by marrying Fisher's mother, all of Fenrin's lordship wealth became Bellicon's. Bellicon hated that Fisher's mother already had a son, Fisher. And when she finally gave birth to a baby girl, Everlane, Bellicon slit their mother's throat because he believed she was useless and always told him lies. She didn't. She was oath-bound and literally could not lie. We think she gave Bellicon oracle answers that he did not want to hear, but that's just our speculation. Bellicon blamed her death on dying in childbirth, and as of now, only Fisher, Ceres, Carrion, and Lorth know the true nature of Fisher's mother's death.
Bellicon is bad news bears, if you haven't gotten this already. But he's also been working behind the scenes for a long time with Malcolm. Yes, despite being in a, air quotes, war with Malcolm's region of Sanisroth. For years, Bellicon has been refusing the Avalian warfront things like food, water, weapons, and most importantly, silver. One of the only substances that can kill vampires. With the warfront weakened and without weapons that can kill the opposite side, it's been very easy for Malcolm to get more bodies on his side. Bellicon's also been hoarding an embargo on silver. If he can get all the silver in the land, no ifs, ands, or buts, then it cannot go to the warfront. But Bellicon has been working with Malcolm for much longer than this war that's been going on for at least as long as anyone can remember. They've been working together since the Blood Curse, which was a millennia ago. And that's quite the secret they've kept under wraps for a very long time.
So where things leave off with Bellicon at the end of Quicksilver. Fisher, Carrion, and Lorth nearly died at Bellicon's hand in the center of the maze, while the crew bought Ceres time to find the Quicksilver coin and end everything. After she flipped the coin and cut off Malcolm's head, the wind, Nicole, swept the death magic away. Bellicon was putting up quite a fight against the trio, but the moment Loras Godsword had its magic returned to it, he fled. We assume Bellicon fled back to the Winter Palace, and we're curious how this will play out now that his big secret of working against his own kingdom for the enemy has been revealed, and one of his two partners in crime is dead. Let's quickly touch on a location that kind of served as headquarters for our group in Quicksilver, Kalish, Kingfisher's home where he is the lord. Most of the citizens of Kalish fled the city a while ago because it was dangerously close to the war's front lines. Fisher hopes to make it safe enough for his people to be able to come home. Fun fact about Kalish, because Fisher's father did not trust Bellicon, he warded the Kalish borders to prevent allowing Bellicon and his supporters into this territory within Yvelia, so Bellicon cannot enter Kalish. There's also a Quicksilver pool in Kalish, and it's where our favorite fire sprite, Archer, lives as he holds down the fort at Kingfisher's family estate.
The last time we saw her on the page, Everlane, Kingfisher's half-sister, was just rescued from Malcolm by Fisher and co. after he sent her through a shadow gate back to Kalish. Everlane was bitten by Malcolm and thus in the process of either dying and then coming back as a feeder, or transitioning into a vampire and being enthralled to Malcolm. Ishabal, the granddaughter of the Balkadir High Witch, was brought to Kalish in order to cast a sedation spell on Everlane.
Only the very powerful witches have this capability, and the Balkadir clan was instrumental all those thousands of years ago in finding the cure for the Blood Curse.
And together with Kingfisher's favorite healer, Taelena, the two suppressed the venom in Lane's blood long enough that Taelena could heal her body. This has never been done before, and there was quite the chance that the venom was just going to kill Everlane even though she was sedated by Ishabal. By the end of Quicksilver, Everlane is alive, and Ren is watching over her. Yes, we ship them so hard! She has fallen into a deep healing sleep that she cannot be roused from, but Taylena and Ishabal are both confident that she will wake any day. But we don't know what state she will be in when she wakes up, which is a deeply concerning line.
Like Nicole said, there's been a war between Yvelia, the Fae, and Sanisroth, the vampires, for a long, long time. Now that the vampire king who's been spearheading this war is dead, it's to be determined where this leaves us with the war. Now that Malcolm is gone and Cerys is queen of Sanisroth, will the rest of Sanisroth still push through with a war going on? It could potentially be even worse with Cerys not having control over the feeder army and the vampires, who are still very much interested in overtaking the realm. Or does she have enough control over all of them to be able to stop the war? How does Bellicon fit into this, having been Malcolm's ally, and now our core group knows the truth about his role in aiding the enemy? Will he still ensure the feeders and vampires have it easy against Yvelia? Or is Bellicon scared now that Malcolm doesn't have control of them and Cerys knows Bellicon's secret?
God, I hope so. So considering the war was between Yvelia and Sanisroth, but now it is discovered that Yvelia is ruled by Bellicon, the bad guy, and Cerys is about to be the new queen of Sanisroth, it seems like this war is no longer going to be region versus region. Instead, it will now be Bellicon and Madra, or the triumvirate as a whole, versus Cerys and Kingfisher. We don't yet know where the other regions of the Balkadir clanlands and Lycia stand in the war yet, but the Balkadir clans are known to absolutely despise Bellicon, so here's to looking hopeful?
This is the perfect time to turn our full attention to the southern territory in this realm. Sanisroth is the kingdom that borders Yvelia, and they are separated by a frozen river called the Darn. Amentraeth, meaning Hell's Teeth, is the capital city of Sanisroth. Its walls are sheer, made of obsidian, slick as glass. It's built from the bones of demons. Oh my. Malcolm had been the only king of this territory for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, growing his army of feeders and vampires and literally creating this whole, I'll call it, civilization of the dead. Fey magic does not work on Sanisrothian soil. Fey magic needs light and life to survive, and there's nothing but death, darkness, and decay on the other side of the river in Sanisroth. That is not a fun place for living people to be stationed right now, like Cerys and Fisher. Now that Malcolm is assumably off the board, though, we're going to talk more about that soon, I'm interested to see what changes can happen in Sanisroth, and if the light and life from magic to flourish can even return to the area, like with the help of witches, or even Cerys' powers, maybe? But again, we can gather there are a lot of vampires still in Sanisroth, and I'm willing to bet they like things the way that they are, or want to keep trying to rule over the realm. While we're on the subject of vampires and Sanisroth, there's the all-important blood curse that has been a through line in the book. Thousands and thousands of years ago, the blood curse turned Fae into vampires. It elongated their teeth so they could bite their victims and drain them, which they needed for their immortality. Malcolm was the very first to be affected by the curse. When the cure was discovered, many of the Yvelian Fae took it because they were horrified by the monsters they become. But there were those, like Malcolm, who preferred being the monsters and chose not to take the cure and thus stay immortal with their dark power. Over the centuries, Malcolm killed off others who kept the curse too, until he was the only OG with the blood curse. It was the last true king of Yvelia, Ruic Dianthus, Carrion's father, who charged 5 witch families with the task of finding the cure to the curse. Of these 5, the Balkadir clan was instrumental in breaking the curse. This is the same clan that Ishabal is heir to. How they figured out how to break the curse, we aren't sure, at least yet. But we do know one thing. Ruic's blood was used to create the blood curse in the first place that allowed Malcolm to become a vampire. So, isn't this interesting? Ruic's blood was used to create the blood curse, and he was the one who sought how to find the cure. But even with the curse lifted, all Fae still have traces of their vampire fangs, and the fangs, the canines, are there still functional. We also know that Fenrir, Fisher's father, studied the blood curse for decades. Why and what we learned? We don't know, but I'm so curious about Papa Fenrir's research. I cannot say that enough. And it was an alchemist who helped Malcolm figure out the key to the blood gift. Whatever blood gift means, but important to know that for our alchemist Cerys in the story.
All right, it's been long enough because we gotta talk about that alchemist. Our FMC, Cerys, because things ended very strange for her. After her talk with Zareth, which don't worry, we will be going through that in a moment, Cerys wakes up in Sanisroth, and she's no longer a human. As she was dying in the maze, Taladeus, Malcolm's second, who was working against him all along, saved Cerys' life. but at a huge cost. He bit her, thus turning her into a vampire. So there were only two things that could have happened. She could have died and returned as a feeder because of Taladeus' bite, or what actually happened, she then fed from Taladeus at his behest, thus becoming a vampire who is/should be enthralled to Taladeus. Considering that he calls himself her sire at the end, we can assume that this is the case. But at least she's in her right mind, so that's pretty good. We're really hoping that Taladeus doesn't use this enthrallment for bad news bears, though. I'm really rooting for this guy.
Me too. I'm really trusting Kingfisher and his judgment here. I think we'll learn a lot more of the ins and outs of enthrallment in Brimstone and how Sarah's, I'll call it, will counter it, maybe? Her free agency was a big theme in Quicksilver, and I can see it continuing in this new way and her having to overcome it, even if Taladeus doesn't control her with the enthrallment. Or there might be some political ramifications with a different vampire having the queen enthralled. The others can't like that Malcolm's number 2 made the queen, right? Or maybe because she's only half vampire and half fae, her enthrallment works a little differently. It's more subdued because she isn't full vampire. That's what I'm hoping for, at least.
That's really what I'm hoping for, too. Because of this shared bite experience, Saris should be full vampire. But because of her conversation with Zareth, god of chaos and change, he proposed for her to become something entirely new in order to keep living, and other things that, again, we'll talk about in a moment. So she returns half vampire, half fae, something that has never been seen before.
So Saris now has pointed ears like the fae and extra sharp canines like the vampires.
Because of this, no one really knows what this is going to entail for her. Will she have to drink from others? Can she go into the sunlight? All the answers, we don't know.
All the healers can confirm is that Saris is definitely not human anymore.
No shit, Sherlock. But we know that she's not just a member of Sanisrothian soil now. She is the queen. But why is Saris the queen of the Sanisrothian court? In Fae courts, the crown is passed down through the bloodline. But if that crown is murdered, then the crown is claimed by the person who slew them. In the vampire court, a place where they've only had one king the entire time, there really isn't a succession plan because Malcolm, the arrogant ass, was planning to live forever. So they adopted the rules of the Fae court. And Saris is the one who killed Malcolm, so she is going to become queen. She's not officially queen right now. In 2 days' time from the ending chapter of Quicksilver, she will be coronated and made the new queen of Sanisroth. We cannot talk about where things left off without discussing our boy Kingfisher, who is in Sanisroth with his mate as she recovers, being transitioned and becoming a queen of a realm. In Quicksilver, Kingfisher suffered the majority of the book with the Quicksilver in his own mind, which we know from when Saris talked to it that the Quicksilver refused to leave him because they are him. One weapon, one being. We also know from our Kala Callies on the show, whenever the Quicksilver in Fisher's eyes are still, that means that he is in his right mind. But whenever it's whirling around or taking over, that means it's very active in his mind, screaming Anorath more, causing him to have hallucinations, and etc. Because of this deep decline of Fisher's sanity, he was planning on taking his own life when he was no longer able to be in his right mind. But at the end of the book, we get a nice little surprise, thank God. When Saris wakes up from her transition, there is much less Quicksilver in Fisher's eye. Huzzah! Turns out that together, Telena and Ishabal found a way to dampen the effects of the metal in his mind, thus quieting the Quicksilver, and eventually, after about 1 million sessions, he will be Quicksilver free. Big news for our boy Fisher! So I think that means Fisher's going to be traveling back to Kalish since that's where Telena and Ishabal are stationed, especially because they're treating Lane there. But allow me to step on my romantic soapbox for a moment, because both Saris and Kingfisher have accepted their side of the bond, leaving them now fully bonded. Yay! They both have a blue-green metallic mating rune tattooed on them, signifying their match as godbound, and have the ability to speak into each other's minds, which I'm sure will come quite in handy in Brimstone. I do wonder what the limits to this ability are, because if Kingfisher is in Zilvarin, would they be able to talk across realms? I doubt it.
Excuse me, yesterday you brought up that they might even be able to bangity bang mind to mind across realms.
You know what? You're right. I'm actually going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with that because I'm in it for the bit now.
All right, sounds good, because I'm going to say I highly doubt that. Though I could see if one of them has something big happen to them, the mate will be able to feel it a little bit across realms, since they can also sense what the other is feeling. Maybe, like if they're injured or something along those lines. But besides that, I'm going to say no.
I am going to say yes because they're God-bound, and that means it's extra tough.
What a surprise! Lexi says no, Nicole says yes. Making another bet.
Well, we do have a sex bet now officially, but we're saving that for episode 6. We know that their bond involves God bindings, meaning that they are going to be a very important couple in Evelian history. But we also know that those who have been God bound in history, which by the way was thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, it always ends in tragedy with one of the two dying. But for right now, we're just going to be happy that the two of them have each other and they're all, bound and such. A chapter that has left many, many readers, including ourselves, in quite the head scratchers is the scene with the gods. And to be quite honest, we believe that we are supposed to be mostly confused. But that's not going to stop us from doing a quick TLDR of what we learned from Zareth's encounter with Saris, considering it's most likely going to be hella important next book. Let's start with the all-important tree. This giant tree represents the entire universe, with each silver leaf being a realm. And surrounding the tree is a moat of Quicksilver that, when the realms fall, they fall into that pool, thus eliminating entire realms. But there's a rot infiltrating the tree. And as Zareth says, he's been waiting a long time for an alchemist who can reset the balance and make that rot go away. So basically, congratulations, Saris. You have the power to save the entire universe from getting eaten away by this rot. But there's a catch, isn't there always? Every time Zareth looked into this metaphorical crystal ball of his and saw Kingfisher and Saris getting together, it sets off a series of events that ends with the entire tree dying. Basically, the end of the universe. No big deal. So in order for, to not have the end of the universe, Zareth has been meddling, reshaping fates, and moving pieces around on the board in order to make it so that Kingfisher and Saris don't meet, and thus the chain of events don't happen. Note, Zareth is not exactly popular for doing this. All of his fellow gods just want to scrap the tree and start over by replanting the tree. Wow. So why not just kill Kingfisher if Zareth is so interested in Saris, and Saris plus Kingfisher equals the end of the world? Well, it's because Zareth has deemed Kingfisher his champion. We don't entirely know what that means, but it is important to note given that Fisher is also connected to the gods.
When Fisher was young and almost died going through the Quicksilver unprotected without a relic, Zareth saved his life, and we're guessing this is when he became Zareth's champion. While yes, Zareth studied the various outcomes of Fisher and Saris connecting and never found a balance that meant good prevailed, there are paths that lead to uncertainty, where the destination is blocked by even the god's sight. And the only common factor in all of these uncertain possibilities is that Saris and Fisher are God-bound mates, which is why Zareth is desperate and still a little hopeful that these two together can succeed. Being God-bound protects Fisher and Saris from the unwanted attention of Zareth's god and goddess brothers and sisters who want Fisher dead.
In this scene, Zareth has a proposition for our girl Saris. She can either die and leave this world, basically saying, "No longer my problem, goodbye," or Zareth can bring her back to life. But she will officially be severed from Zareth's protection. He will not be able to meddle, he will not be able to save her, or anything else. Which for him means he's basically saying, good luck, figure out how to save the universe on your own without my help.
Yeah, when she asks how to do that, like, how am I supposed to save everybody? He's like, just live your life.
And she's like, you mean what I've been wanting to do this entire fucking book? Okay.
Can you imagine that sentence where it's like, no pressure, just live my life. Okay.
Yeah, okay. But in order for her to be severed, she has to come back as something new, because the universe cannot focus on, and therefore meddle in, what it does not recognize. Ergo, she will return as half fae, half vampire, something the world has never seen and cannot focus on.
This, of course, leaves us readers with a whole bunch of questions.
No shit!
Sorry, I'm just laughing. Will we see this conflict with the other gods, and our characters will have to eventually deal with their unwanted attention?
Yes.
Where is this rot coming from that is making realms of this universe die?
Another realm.
Is it related to the triumvirate and their one source of power that they've referenced?
No.
Nicole, these are theoretical.
I'm just giving my best guess.
These are rhetorical questions.
I'm just giving my best guess.
Is the rot related to the death magic and the blood curse somehow? I'm going to say yes, too. How can an alchemist restore the balance? What does that even mean, Nicole?
Yes.
I have so many other questions around the threads of fate and more. I have so many questions that I don't even know how to form my questions, but you all get the idea. Nicole gets it too. There's a big old question mark next to the gods and their involvement or lack of involvement now. This would not be a recap episode if we did not share a TLDR on alchemy, which is such a cornerstone magic in this world. And Ceres is the most powerful alchemist ever, but she doesn't know how to tap into all that magic yet. Alchemy is a forgotten, long-dead old magic. All alchemists are fae, but not all fae are alchemists. For someone to be an alchemist, they need to have fae blood, even if it's just the smallest drop. There are 3 branches or types of alchemists. Number 1, those who want to discover the path to immortality. Number 2, those who want to create and invent by transmuting various metals and ores. That is what is believed that Ceres is. And number 3, those who want to cure illness and disease. We don't know much about the 2 alchemy branches regarding immortality and cures, but we do know some about their transmutation alchemists. These alchemists are who forge Quicksilver into weaponry for Fae warriors. They are the only people who can manipulate metals as long as there is at least 5% Quicksilver, the exception here being Ceres, who can manipulate and control metals with there is way less than 5%. Even then, with that 5% of Quicksilver, it is typical that these alchemists can only transmute the Quicksilver from its solid to liquid state so that it can be forged. The ways we know that alchemists can transmute Quicksilver include forging new weapons, creating relics, activating and deactivating the Quicksilver pools, shattering weapons, but only the strongest alchemists like Ceres can do this. Nobody had ever seen anybody do this before or even heard of it happening after she had done this back in Quicksilver. And while it's not physically on the page, we hear stories that they used to transmute compounds into precious metals like silver and gold to fill palace coffers. Aside from these different branches of alchemy, our alchemists are able to work with a specific element or elements. From my understanding, the more elements an alchemist can manipulate, the stronger they are. While we haven't outright seen manipulation of these elements on the page that we know of, thanks to Fisher and Malcolm, a few of the different categories an alchemist can manipulate include, and this is not a comprehensive list, light, dark, silver, steel, earth, air, fire, water, salt, brimstone, and quicksilver. Coincidentally, these are all of the elements that Ceres can manipulate according to her runes that appeared on her hands. Callie has informed us that we only know about 10% of Ceres' powers so far. I can guarantee you we will learn more about all that in the series, with her elemental magic and her alchemy magic.
Like I said in the deep dive, I'm shocked it's even 10%. Like, I'm shocked.
Me too. We really had to pull every last little morsel we could about these powers, and we're still confused.
Now that we've been through the major areas of the Fae and Alchemy series, let's discuss any other outliers or major players who we are keeping an eye on as we head into Brimstone.
We got to go back to the triumvirate and the big question of if Malcolm is really dead. His head was chopped off with a god sword, and then his head and his body combusted into blue flame. The power Malcolm had over Gilthry left as soon as he died, and at least one vampire who had been enthralled to Malcolm, Taladeus, is free now. So it sure seems like Malcolm is dead. Like, according to all of the information we always have, whether somebody is dead or not, Malcolm checks every possible box. He is supposed to be dead. However, to kill one member of the triumvirate, one must kill all three, and that is no easy task. The three crowns are immortal, even call themselves gods, and share one source. They're especially more powerful when reunited, like they were at the end of Quicksilver. So if Malcolm is indeed dead, which seems likely, where does that leave the other two, their power, their immortality, and their future goals? If Belcon and Madra have to die in order to Malcolm to be truly dead, where does that leave Malcolm at this time? Could he potentially still be a threat?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am so convinced, and I think that's going to be a major goal of our characters. Next book is going to be how do we kill Bellicon and Madra as fast as possible in order to ensure the Triumvirate is officially dead.
So you do or do not think that Malcolm is dead?
I think Malcolm has a time clock a-ticking in which he can respawn and come back. Maybe smaller and faster like Morphil.
Oh, Morthrill.
Morphil, what a guy.
I'm going to go with Malcolm is dead.
Oh.
And
are we seriously making a bet in a recap episode?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Malcolm is dead. Lexi says yes. Finally, I have a yes.
All right, so here's the bet. Malcolm is dead. Lexi says yes. Nicole says no. Wow.
Then we have Kingfisher's closest warriors, his wolves. Ooh, the Lupo Proalia. We've been working on animals a lot with my kids. Traditionally, there are 8 members of the Lupo Proalia, but there have been fewer in recent centuries, sadly.
Let's first talk about Lorith, our favorite singing bard who's just the fucking best. Lorith is, as of the end of this book, with Saris, Carrion, and Fisher in Sanisroth, with his godsword, Avisiath, a very powerful godsword with the power of Angel's Breath, which is basically being able to spider web this like blue radiant power through a battlefield, destroying an army into ash. That is so cool. It also has the power of turning night into day.
Speaking of that godsword, let's go ahead and get Danya out of the way too. Everyone's least favorite Lupo Proalia.
Justice for my girl Danya.
No, she is currently in time out.
She is, that's fair.
She has a tendency of throwing temper tantrums. Laura's godsword used to be hers when it was dormant, but when Saris reforged the blade, it activated and channeled its magic for Lorith, not Danya. And she is very, very bitter about this. She even lost her hand when she tried to take the sword from him, because you cannot touch a godsword if it is not yours. Taylena healed her hand in college, and last we knew, Fisher put Danya in timeout in Irin, the war camp where she lives.
She is literally in timeout.
She is literally, because she pissed off the witches, and she almost ruined that mission of theirs too.
While we're on members of the Lupo Proalia, let's discuss a few others who haven't been officially seen on the page, but we know from the Gate bonus chapter. Let's start with my favorite, Mirel, who is Renfis's twin sister, who sadly died at the Battle of Ashen-Gate. Her soul is also within Nimmerel, Kingfisher's godsword. Then we have Corix and Vash Gideon, who were both present at the Battle of Ashen-Gate and survived, but we don't know where they are in the book. And last but not least, we have Folly, who was also sadly lost and flung into a black darkness at the Battle of Ashen-Gate. This has me very worried for Folly, because we don't technically see him die on a page. Instead, he just gets flung into a vat of feeders, which is not good.
That's not good at all.
Now, you don't think we've forgotten about him, do you? We have, last but not least, the one, the only, Carrion fucking Swift. Or should I say, Carrion fucking Dianthus. Dianthus, yes, the previous ruling house of Evalia. Over 1,000 years ago, Bellicon murdered the Dianthus line, specifically Rurik and Amelia, Carrion's parents. But he seemed to have maybe forgotten a very important person.
I don't think he forgot. He
couldn't find him.
He couldn't find him.
The baby was gone. Baby Carrion. Right before Madra stilled the Quicksilver pools, Finran, Kingfisher's father, brought baby Carrion to Zelvarin and off to the hands of Orlena Swift, an ex-slave of Madra's palace. For over 1,000 years, Carrion has lived glamored as a human in Zelvarin until he was brought through the Quicksilver pool by Kingfisher to his home realm. And at the end of this book, not only is the glamour lifted off of him and his true fairness is showing, but he's also revealed as the Dianthus heir to our crew, and more importantly, to the Triumvirate.
Including Bellicon, who very specifically meant to kill the whole Dianthus bloodline.
Which brings us to why Carrion being a Dianthus is super duper important. Because Dianthus blood was used to create the blood curse, again for reasons unknown, Carrion's bloodline created Malcolm. So when Carrion lightly nudged Malcolm to drink from him, Malcolm not knowing he was a Dianthus, Malcolm's not able to drink from the living members of the bloodline that created him. Basically, when Malcolm took a little nibble of Dianthus blood, it should have killed him instantly. But because Malcolm was so powerful, it only gravely wounded him.
So this does make me wonder if Malcolm pretty much created all the other vampires. Does that mean that Carrion's blood could kill any of the vampires?
So that's what I'm thinking. I am absolutely thinking that.
Okay.
So going back to Carrion, what does this mean for the rest of Evalia? Technically, the rules in the Fae courts are that the crown is passed to the regent's heir. But if the regent is murdered, like Rurik was murdered by Belicon, then the crown would go to the usurper.
So I love the idea of Cerys killing Malcolm and Kingfisher killing Madra and Carrion killing Belicon.
That's exactly what I was thinking, yes. To close out this recap episode, let's take a brief moment and discuss what we are most excited about for Brimstone. Honestly, I had to narrow this down really tight because there's so many things I'm excited for.
I'll say this. I gained more appreciation for this series as we've been deep diving it, especially around all the lore and theories. It really has been one of the most fun deep dives that we have done. And oh my gosh, my brain is just having so much fun with all this creative problem solving. I can't wait to learn more about Fisher's father and the whole backstory behind his disappearance, including the timeline that has driven me crazy all book, but Kelly says will make sense when we get more information. I want to know more about Finran's research about the blood curse. I want to know more about the blood curse in general. I really do think that there's going to be a present conflict in regard to the blood curse. I'm so excited for more Carrion, especially now after his big reveal, and to see him and Kingfisher have lots of page time together in Selvarin, and to learn more about the witches. Super excited to see how Ishabel will influence the story and how the Balcadier clan will play into this. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of vampire politics, which I might not be a vampire girly, but this series is one of my very few exceptions. And I want to know everything about why Selvarin is called the Silver City, how the Triumvirate works with their immortality. Malcolm's really dead, right? And their shared source of power. Speaking of power, I am dying to know more about the alchemists and what it means for Cerys to be the most powerful ever. Maybe she'll meet another alchemist from a different realm who can train her. Maybe even one from Selvarin. Okay, I'm just starting to list everything at this point. No, I gotta stop and let you take the mic, Nicole.
I mean, we have a lot of the same ones. Other than seeing Kingfisher and Selvarin, which, yes, Kingfisher interacting with Carrion, any moments of that is just gold on the page. I'm also going to include Kingfisher, I hope, interacting with Hayden.
He's gonna almost kill her.
I know, and I'm so excited. I'm also really excited to learn more about Finran. You and I both are fully in the camp that Homeboy is not dead. His mysterious research is driving me crazy, about half as much as it's driving you crazy, I'm sure. I'm really curious to learn more about the tattoos. That's one of my favorite parts about this series. The vampire court politics, because I find this dark shit, like the feeders and how they're described, makes, I'm not a horror movie person, but I love this kind of shit in books. That is just dark shit is fascinating to me. I also cannot wait for more Fisher lines and moments where he's both such an asshole and hilarious, and also moments where he's super swoony and dirty.
I will say I'm also very excited for this side of Fisher. I think that when he was outwardly being a dick to Cerys for all of the reasons that he explained in Quicksilver, some of us were like, we had our game, is it funny, flirty, or L-worthy for a good reason? And then the second half of the book where he just embraced his love for her, oh my gosh, top MMC worthy.
Yes.
And so I really think he's going to jump up there even more in the continuing books, because he is a man who has his mate, who is super overprotective, who is scary in a really sexy way.
Yes, I agree. I can absolutely see him jumping up my book boyfriend list after Brimstone. I'm also going to say something that I don't normally say on the podcast. I cannot wait for the politics next book, especially the vampire politics, how this is going to work in Amontreath. I'm so excited for all of that. Yes, I'm excited for the romance, obviously, but I feel like book one was the romance book, and now we just get to see them being in love and being a team, and then we get to see how they deal with the world together, and that's just, I love this shit.
I remember Callie actually saying that in our book club interview with her. She said that book one is really focused on their romance and how they come to be together, and then after that, it's focusing on everything else that is going on. So I'm so excited for all the more world building, all of the politics, all of the realm jumping, hopefully.
Onyx.
Yeah.
I can't wait
Onyx.
for Onyx.
Can't forget about Onyx.
Oh my God. I'm so excited.
All right, before we make this recap episode any longer, thank you so much for listening to this little episode of Quicksilver as we get excited for Brimstone.
And in case you're new here, hey, hi, hello. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it was helpful. If you want a bigger deep dive, we have 5 episodes devoted to Quicksilver where we dive deep into those stretches of chapters, talking about lore, any major downloads from characters, any big character analyses, and so many theories. And the 6th and final episode drops this Monday. But you have plenty of time to catch up before Brimstone releases on November 18th. Let's talk about this upcoming episode 6 on Monday, where we are covering chapters 44 and 45, aka the Godlands chapter. We're basically going line by line through everything Xaereth says to Saris.
The following week on November 17th, we have an interview with the one, the only Callie Hart. It'll be perfect to listen to as you're driving to your Brimstone midnight release party or waiting for the clock to strike midnight so that you can download that new book.
Speaking of, we are hosting a midnight release party here in Denver, Colorado at Tattered Cover in partnership with Book and Gather, where we are having a live Q&A hosted by Lexi and myself, scavenger hunts, trivias, raffles, special drinks, and so much more. Link in the show notes for tickets.
If you would like this episode outlined to study before you read Brimstone, as well as get access to our podcast episodes a day early and ad-free, yes, this includes our first episode of Brimstone, join our fan club at fantasyfangirls.com/fan club. The link is also in the show notes.
Thank you, as always, to our master librarian, aka our content researcher, Brooke, and of course, our executive producer, aka our sanity manager, Hayden.
We are very active on social media with weekly trivia, book guides, and lots more. So please be sure to follow us on Instagram and /our TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod. And if you're watching this on YouTube or want to watch on YouTube, pretty please hit that subscribe button to keep following along.
While you're hitting buttons, don't forget to hit that 5-star button for rating the show. It is so helpful, not just for this podcast, but for any podcast you listen to. And while you're at it, if you want to go above and beyond, write a little love note in that review section. It is so helpful. And last but not least, share this episode with your fellow Quicksilver friends. If you don't have time for a reread and you know your best friend doesn't either, this is the perfect episode to send to them.
All right, we hope this was really helpful as we all prepare for Brimstone. We are so excited to see you on the other side. Bye-bye.
Bye.